A good way of explaining this to people is to think about the three doctors. Now, the three doctors were professors in a medical school in Salerno, which was the highest level of medical training in the 13th century. I always imagine the three professors sitting over wine in a courtyard, being very clever and enjoying their glass of wine, and coming up with the idea that there are three doctors that influence our health. And they are Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Laughter. All of these are important. Some people, the main influence is their diet, and we've talked about the fruit and vegetables and essential fatty acids. Some people cannot be quiet. To sit for 5 minutes in their own company with no book, no radio, no iPad, no iTunes is complete torture. They're the kind of people who find it very difficult to even consider meditation or yoga because they're not in the habit of practicing any Dr. Quiet. For them, they're in a constant buzz, which is a stress on their system. Dr. Laughter is the one I write most on my prescription pad. I have a prescription pad with all my clever letters on the bottom, and when I sign it, it's a very official document. And I write their name and address, and in the middle I write Dr. Laughter, and then I sign it and I give it to the patient. And that's to let them know the seriousness of having fun, which is a bit of an oxymoron. I often send people underneath the Dr. Laughter, more laughing, I put the Laughing Policeman, where I suggest that people listen to the Laughing Policeman on YouTube on a daily basis, and it's very hard not to laugh. Remember, our bodies have no idea why we're laughing. They create endorphins simply because we're laughing. Toddlers laugh for absolutely no reason. You know that wonderful chuckle? And if we pretend that we're toddlers and do some chuckling, one of the problems for people living on their own is that they don't have anybody to tell a silly joke, a silly story, which has both of you laughing or all of you laughing. And more in our society, people are living alone. So Dr. Laughter is being missed out big time. Laughing is very important for the immune system, for our sense of well-being, our mood. Everything really requires Dr. Laughter. So the three doctors are equally important, and a good thing to consider in general for why people get sick. Which of these are out of balance for them? Over the years, I got to thinking about the three doctors and realised there are more doctors affecting my patients now than those three doctors. And usually when I'm cycling home from work and mulling things over while pushing up Taylor's Hill in Galway, two more doctors occurred to me. This was over a period of months when thinking about what are the basic requirements, what are the basic things that are pushing my patients into ill health. And I added two more, not because I'm terribly clever, but because the world has changed since the 13th century. So I've added two more doctors for living in the 21st century. So we have 5 doctors in total. And the 2 extra are Dr. Movement and Dr. Sleep. And I didn't put in Dr. Exercise on purpose because it really is about movement. It really is about going up and down stairs the extra time, putting the washing out on the line enthusiastically and with a brisk pace, getting into the garden, getting dancing when your favourite tune turns on the radio, going to Pilates classes, yoga classes, all of these kinds of things. The gym, swimming in the sea, swimming in the pool. So whatever movement appeals to you, running up and down your stairs at home, skipping for 10 minutes on your back patio. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be expensive. It really can be as creative as you make it in your own life. Dr. Sleep. I said about the sleep since the electrification, and also it suffers because of this living in the field with the bull. Big field, bull always there, and even seems to affect wakefulness. This is the kind of person who wakes 2 or 3 times during the night. Often they can go back to sleep fairly easily, but it's like a state within sleep of being easily aroused and anxious and shoulders tense, heaviness in the chest. And this all is associated with poor sleep. good sleep habits are very important for some people. So that's great. I have one more slide about how the body works in totality, and then we're off on the individual herbs journey just to keep you involved. We're getting there, and I hope you're enjoying the learning. I love this slide. It took me a long time to come up with this concept of how the body is all joined up writing. There's no lines that define our gut system from our hormones, from our skin. They're all joined together with arrows going both ways. If you imagine this ball like a three-dimensional ball with everything being fluid, everything turns into everything else. If we have inflammation in one system, there's an inflammatory background which affects the whole system. If our hormones are out of sync, it affects, for instance, our skin, with teenage acne would be a good example. If we have poor circulation, well, that means areas that are very difficult to circulate even under normal circumstances will be vulnerable. For instance, the sinuses. The sinuses have very, very poor circulation. Food and digestion, you'll notice, is the bottom circle, and it is fundamental to health. Food is what we take in. Digestion determines how we assimilate what we take in. And the building blocks for all of these systems are the food that we take in and the food that we leave behind. Because if we take in the wrong molecules during the digestive process, then we put pressure on the immune system, all the tissues. Stress and sleep is fairly core. Joints and skin are in together because from a herbal point of view, the joints and the skin are both potential spaces that exhibit problems fundamental to normal physiology. So the huge connection between the digestion and the brain, and really a huge connection between everything. We are a coordinated, closed metabolic unit. What goes in has to be used, assimilated and excreted on a regular basis. It's a very fluid system. One of the most important fluid systems is the extracellular fluid, which is the fluid between the cells, like a glistening membrane. And there's a space between two cells, and there's a film of fluid, which is the extracellular fluid. And that's the background matrix within which all of this happens. So it's a very dynamic way of looking at your biology or physiology or biochemistry. And they are all just describing in different ways the systems that are involved or what we know about the systems that are involved in all these processes. It makes kind of who we are more individual, more exciting, more interactive with ourselves and the environment. And it gives you a basis upon which to think about how the herbal actions that we described earlier might influence our physiology. Not only does our physiology have multifunctional, integrated, multi-level, three-dimensional, fluid physiology, but the same can be said of the herbs. And I take the example of turmeric. All of these effects of turmeric are all proven by research, and they are all true. So I can look to turmeric as a herb for wound healing, immune function, neuroprotection, antimicrobial, antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, anti-cancer with these various effects on cancer cells, antioxidant activity, and an anti-inflammatory activity. So think of all the conditions that I could use turmeric for wound healing, post-operatively or due to trauma, anti-inflammatory, so for arthritis. It also has a cholesterol-lowering effect, probably because of this anti-inflammatory effect. Antioxidant activity is good for the efficiency at any stage in life, but is particularly important as we get older. Anti-cancer, we fight off millions of cancer cells every day. The amazing thing is that more people don't have cancer, but that is increasing year on year, generation by generation. But we effectively fight off and kill these cancer cells on a regular basis. And it's only if our background terrain is very poor that we develop cancer, very poor for one reason or another. So an anti-cancer effect is not just for people with cancer, it's for everybody. It's preventative medicine, which is even more important. The reason why herbs are so helpful in so many conditions is because they have so many constituents. If you have one molecule in a pill, for example, paracetamol, it has a very limited range of action on the body tissues. But if you have 350 constituents, you might have 15 what we call active constituents. You might indeed have 3 toxic constituents, but there are 5 constituents which block the toxic effects or minimize them so that they are not of metabolic importance. And the active constituents can be active in various multiple processes within our normal physiology or abnormal physiology if we're unwell. So they are multi-constituent, multi-action, they act at multiple sites, and they're much more complex. And this is one of the reasons why the regulation of herbal medicines is so difficult for authorities, nothing to do with the herbs themselves, because they have such a varied action. It's also one of the reasons why it's very difficult to do the standard research. If you have one pill that has a very limited effect and it has a big effect on a system, then that is easy to quantify. If you have several constituents acting in a whole variety of sites, each site having a very small metabolic action, then that is much more difficult to quantify for research. So it's not just a question of numbers and money, it's actually a much more complex scenario. And the more complex the scenario, the more difficult it is to do research. But from our body's point of view, this complexity has enormous advantages because we have very small effects. We also have very small incidence of side effects. And we're not looking to overwhelm the body. We're looking to actually support the wound healing abilities of the body, support the immune function of the body. We're not looking to overwhelm it. We're looking to support those functions by bringing in plant actions that help our bodies perform the tasks that they need to do to stay well. I think that's a very exciting concept, and I hope you get a good feel for why the herbs can be so helpful, even though they have very gentle actions. They have multiple very gentle actions. And this is just turmeric. The same applies to many of the herbs.